Hot kunuratus sa kwego yauni na kwego unkana wahatio tanaki na hoti onyo jera na yukwat kanisa argi sa wanisarade ahanto kadaso wakata hunzone ti tinuratus na sungwaya titu tanu ya tinista hunzage ti kwego no hota adun hatsunkiawis kati tsakwas na yujat tanu waganyahtu kanya kahaga gyanto tanu Kanehsatà gena kanagere. I want to thank the organizers for putting this together and is the reason why we are all gathered here today. I also want to greet the Creator and greet Mother Earth for all the life that they give us and help us to survive on this earth. So one of the things, I guess I missed that slide. One of the things that the Iroquois people do is acknowledge all of creation. We call it the words that are said before all else. And it's a consensus-building kind of prayer, where at the end, after all the words of we are acknowledging all our relations, from the waters, the fish, the medicines, the green plants, to the trees and the birds, that we understand that they are important to our survival. And at the end we ask, are we all of one mind? So I'm going to ask you, yes. So skana sawatunyus na jinahota ge wana sunota ge targi so inserate. So I ask you to be of peaceful minds when you listen to the words that I'm going to say today. Okay, so this is what's on the screen. So I want to start off with a quote from the late John Mohawk about colonization, because this is what Indigenous peoples throughout the world have been experiencing. And a survival, we're learning to survive on a daily basis, even today. People think, and you know, the Prime Minister of Canada thinks that colonization is over. In fact, he's even said that colonization never happened in Canada. So it's another lie that he's been telling the world. But colonization continues today in Canada in various forms and policies in Canada to assimilate us, to threaten our languages, our culture. And one of the things that they base all this justification for oppression, and in fact for genocide, comes from centuries-old doctrines of discovery. And you know, US and Canadian property laws are also based on these legal fictions. So it's an excuse to justify the theft of our lands. It's an excuse to oppress people, and it's been an excuse to kill our people. And so when we talk about justice and climate and Mother Earth, we need to talk about those teachings of our ancestors that are just as relevant today as they were yesterday. Those teachings were designed to evolve and bring us strength, hope, and love. And why? And it's because for future generations, we are supposed to be thinking about the children. That's what we should be telling the UN member states. That's what you should be telling your President of the United States. He has 2 daughters. What about their future? We cannot go live on Mars. We cannot get water, import water from the moon. It has to be here and today. And one of the things that the UN member states forget to think about is the rights of the children and the rights of human beings. And the fact that we cannot live without water, we cannot live without air, we cannot live without love, we cannot live without peace. Because without those essential elements of life, our lives don't mean that much. In fact, our lives are over. And when we talk about climate justice, when we talk about those things that are essential to human life, and when we ask these corporations to stand aside, and when the people decide that it's time to take back their democracy from the corporate-controlled governments and the corporations, when the people decide that, you got to get up off your seats. You got to get up and tell your friends. You got to get up and bring that into schools of your children, about what's been going on to Indigenous peoples, because if they had respected our lives as human beings from the beginning, since contact, we would not be in this terrible mess today where the lives of future generations are in peril because of what we are doing to the climate and to the earth today. So I just want to quote one of the judges in Canada, when we have no business figuring out the cost of justice until we can figure out the real cost of justice. And one of the things that I think is really important that people forget about is that they don't even consider justice on a daily basis, as long as it doesn't affect them. As long as they're not in like they can go to the store and buy whatever, they're fine. But the second we're in justice, we're in these states of trauma, we're in these states of crisis, people seem to get together. And what people haven't realized is that we are in a crisis. On a daily basis, we are in a crisis. We are making the kinds of decisions that we have no right to, because we are supposed to be here to protect future generations. If we care about life, if we care about the human species existing, because Mother Earth will exist long after we're extinct. But if we care about our species existing, then we need to become educated on every aspect of our lives, not just what corporate law is, not just what economics is. And Obama and Stephen Harper have both said their two priorities are economics and job security. And job security, why? Because they want to get elected the next time around, and it's not because they care. And one of the big things that's happening this week is at the United Nations, there's the World Conference on Indigenous Peoples. It's another level of colonialism for Indigenous peoples. And while we're very, very happy that we have our foot in the door, because one of the great Iroquois chiefs, Kanien'kehá, went to Geneva in the 1920s, and he asked for the Iroquois people to become part of the League of Nations, because we have never surrendered our sovereignty. We never gave up that right. In fact, we have been struggling. As that young woman from Elsipogtog has, with her feather in the air, that has been the symbol, that's really the symbol of Indigenous peoples. Because while we have been fighting your governments, we've been asking you to stand beside us, not in front of us, not speak for us, but beside us in this struggle against authoritarian governments, against corporations who are abusing the planet. And in Canada, one of the things that we see happening is corporations have more rights to water than a hospital. They have more rights to water than an individual. And I know France and some other countries and people like Stephen Harper, and I guess here in the US, have privatized water. One of the most essential things that is part of our life. And we cannot exist without water after 3 days. And yet this is what they're doing when they're fracking. This is what they're doing when they take away our right to speak. And so those of you who know a little bit, those of you who are not educated about Indigenous peoples' history in the Americas, do so. Because a genocide happened here. A genocide against children. And again, we're going to go back to this theme of children, because this is what we need to remember when we're talking about it. Children were forcibly taken from their homes. They were punished for speaking their languages. And I have stories from people from my community. And they had needles put in their tongues. Their hands were held over a hot flame when they spoke their languages. And so what we have today is the threat. And in Canada, the threat to Indigenous language is the highest of all the world, in the most developed countries, in one of the most developed countries in the world. So I think we'll skip, because I don't know where the person who's got the time, 3 minutes or whatever, I don't know how much time we have. But this is a young girl from my community. And who here has read the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples? Okay, so not all of you. Most of you haven't. So please take a look on the UN website and read the declaration, because it talks about the dispossession that's continuing today. And it talks about It's the framework for reconciliation, and I know some people don't like that word. I don't care. It's not our language. But reconciliation in some way where we can take back control, our right to self-determination. Not because Canada or the US says we have that right. We've always had that right. We've always maintained that right. And we're telling you here today that that right means the survival of us into the next century, the survival of our species according to the teachings of our ancestors, where we respect all life, that we understand that we are part of the environment. We are not above it. We are part of that environment. And you know, it's really difficult in New York City, and I don't want to offend Chief Perry for this, but one of the things that's really important, when we have our moccasins on, you know, when the women have the moccasins, and Iroquois people, we shuffle. The women shuffle, so we get that energy from the earth. And I was trying to get that energy when I was walking around outside, and it was a little bit difficult. But I think your energy is helping me to speak. So Kanehsatà is the oldest Kanien'kehá community, people of the Flint, and it's located near Montreal. And we have Line 9B, we have TransCanada, Energy East, we have had a uranium mine that was, you know, all of a sudden in 1980 when it was closed, the company, the St. Lawrence Columbian Corporation, all of a sudden they went bankrupt. So they left diesel there, and now we have another company where the board is predominantly from China, trying to open up another mine in the very close proximity. It's a niobium. And niobium is used to strengthen steel, you know, for tanks. Because, hey, what would the economy be without war? What would the economy be without regenerating that kind of industry? So I feel like I'm talking too fast. Am I talking too fast? Okay. Okay. Oh, that's the time. Cool. I have the time here. Okay. And you know, I am one of many generations that have fought the colonizers, and they've been trying to get rid of the Kanien'kehá people in my territory. We're 62 kilometers northwest of Montreal, and in 1990, we stood up against a paramilitary force on July 11th in 1990, and we had a 78-day siege in my community. And I notice whether they're talking about Palestinians, whether they're talking about any kind of group that opposes corporate interests, it's the same language. There's a manual, you know, like these are rebels or these are terrorists that took over the community and they have no right. And, you know, we want to talk to the moderates, you know, the civilized Indians, not the savage Indians who are still practicing their ancestral teachings. So we've always resisted the colonizers. And one of the things that's really interesting, I find, with TransCanada especially, because they've come into my community and they have told us, I attended a meeting where they're using our own people. Ishkanogan is sort of the middleman for TransCanada with Aboriginal communities, and they're doing these consultations, these so-called consultations, where they're saying, you know, this is going to be happening anyway, so you may as well benefit from it. And, you know, help us help you by giving us your traditional knowledge. And, you know, you can pick and choose what part of your traditional knowledge you're not going to use to be made public. And I think I want to skip to this one, yeah. So this is one of the things on this outcome document that states have for the World Conference on Indigenous People being objecting to the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples when it comes to resource extraction. And resource extraction, of course, is killing the planet. And we're helping it along. Every single one of us is not, everyone here is guilty of that, because we are using petroleum products on a daily basis. And so it's time to come up with some other ideas besides wind energy. And it's time to change the way our lifestyles are. Because if we do not change that, if we don't change that, and it's people I heard yesterday in the opening of the Justice Climate Conference last night, they talked about changing the system. It's not just changing the system. It's changing the way we think. It's changing the way we live as a people, and there should be a distribution of wealth. There should be nobody who's richer than the other person. And I'm not talking about socialism. I don't want to talk about communism. I'm not any of those things. I'm for equality of everybody. Because, remember when the tobacco companies had to pay some I don't know if they did in the US, but they had to pay for health care, right? Because of the lung cancer. Well, why aren't the oil corporations, especially the ones who are in the tar sands, paying for the healthcare systems of everybody around the world for all the asthma, and the cancers, the people who are living right around the tar sands, they're getting cancers that are normally seen by people who are overexposed to petroleum products. So I have like 15 seconds left. I want to get to something. Keep going. Yeah. I want to get to our stolen sisters and the reason why it's important that women be recognized, and not just token recognition. We want real recognition to bring back the power and the authority of Indigenous women in our rights to make decisions on our lands and territories, rights to make decisions about our language, culture, and education, and right to be part of discussing what are the solutions with the powers that be. Because Indigenous women were the targets of the Indian Act because they knew that the power rested with the women. And right now, it's a man's world. And in fact, it's a rape culture because in Canada, rape of Indigenous women has gone on with impunity. And the government of Canada refuses to have a national plan of action. They refuse to have an inquiry because it profits them to continue to oppress Indigenous people. And the best way to do it is by the life giver themselves, the women, and it ruptures the family unit. And it's another form of genocide as far as I'm concerned. So all the people who believe that this is just a domestic problem, please educate yourselves. Because the issue of murdered and missing Indigenous women in Canada and the US is because of colonization. It's deeply rooted in colonization. That's it for me. Okay. So sorry, I'm Mohawk, so we like to talk a lot, and so I really appreciate the opportunity to speak here tonight, and I look forward to hearing the other women speakers here. And I just want to say, we're talking about things, and we're in dire crisis. We were in dire crisis generations ago. But we need to bring back the hope for our youth and for our children because they deserve better than what they're getting right now. They deserve the ultimate effort from every single person in this room and every single person who is listening out there in the broadcast. And to the UN member states who are going to be discussing the rights of Indigenous people and the rights and climate change, become a human being, take a look at what is precious in this world, and bring yourself down and with the average person. Because life is precious. All life is precious. And every single day that we wake up and we're alive again, we should be thankful for. We should be thankful to Kanehsatà, that's the Mother Earth. And we should be thankful to all the life givers that we have, whether they're male or female. And thank you for listening to me and thank you for inviting me. Tony Gawanake.